Hello and welcome back to the Second Take Podcast. My name is Calvin Williams. I'm here with my co-host Marco Rogers. Today we have a nice recap of the college football season as well as a recap of the week 3 of the NFL. And today we're throwing in some Heisman predictions as we are basically 1/3 of the way through the college football season, which is pretty crazy to think about because it feels like it just started. After we do some Heisman predictions, then we'll do some predictions for the NFL and college football for the coming week. We're very excited to get started, so let's do it. All right, first of all, Michigan taking down Maryland in a very tough home game. I'm sure Michigan fans weren't expecting this. Rough game for J.J. McCarthy. But Blake Corum played it phenomenal, so you got to take your pluses. A win is a win. Michigan's going to take this, and they got to learn.
Yeah, obviously without Donovan Edwards, without Mekhi Green, without Eric All, it was tough. Luke Schoonmaker stepped up, tight end too, and obviously CJ Stokes came in for a play, fumbled, so he went out for the game, which further increased Blake Corum's load, getting him all the way up to 30 carries, 243 yards, 2 touchdowns. It was a lot closer than a lot of people expected. Maryland's going to be a good team this year. I think they could easily get 8-9 wins, and it's a good learning lesson for the team.
Yeah, and Maryland looked very strong, especially on the O-line, and Tulia Tagovailoa looked phenomenal. And next week, hopefully we'll have Donovan Edwards back. Harbaugh's been very disclosed about giving too much information about his injury, but from what I can tell, it's not terribly serious. But we're hoping to have him back because he is a huge part of that passing offense. Moving on, number 10, Arkansas loses in an absolute heartbreaker to Texas A&M. Marco, you want to explain this one?
Yeah, Arkansas down too late, and they have a very short field goal, I believe. It was under 40 yards. The field goal doesn't just hit the upright. It goes on top, hits the top of the upright, then bounces back. I've never really seen it hit the top of the upright. Only another inch for it to get up there and be good. Overall, Texas A&M, solid game. Devon A-Chain, he's incredible. One of the better running backs in college football. He's so fast, very explosive. He had 160 yards and a touchdown. And KJ Jefferson, I think, had to do too much this game. 105 rushing yards, 171 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, a rushing touchdown. I think they need other playmakers to step up if they want to compete in the SEC for Arkansas.
Yeah, and this SEC has just been kind of a mess. Like, other than, Georgia, they've been pretty, variant. Because, even Alabama playing a close one to a Texas team that just lost last week. So, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how the SEC plays out. But, Texas A&M getting the win here over Arkansas is big for the SEC, and it's going to definitely change the scope of the rest of the SEC season. Next up, Kansas State upsetting number 6 Oklahoma on the road. This game was just dominated on the ground, 41-34 Kansas State. But they had 4 rushing touchdowns with one guy, and that one guy was their quarterback. So that alone is insane. Their quarterback having 21 carries for 148 yards and 4 touchdowns is insane in itself. And then to, caveat that, their running back Deuce Vaughn ran in for a touchdown of his own and another 116 yards. So Oklahoma could not stop the run this week, and that is not a good sign for them.
Yeah, Dylan Gabriel performed well, 330 yards, 4 touchdowns. Adrian Martinez, he just had a lot of grit in this game. He never gave up, kept on running, broke a lot of tackles, got extra yards, and he was unstoppable today. I'm impressed with Kansas State after last week's loss to Tulane. I thought that this season was over for them, but they really bounced back here and get a big win, and I still think that they could compete in the Big 12.
For sure. Big 12 is certainly up for grabs after that loss from Oklahoma and the last week's loss from Texas. All right, next we have Minnesota absolutely dominating MSU. MSU with 2 straight losses where they haven't really played it very close. Marco, what do you have to say about how this Michigan State team is going to, if they're going to turn it around at all?
Yeah, I mean, Michigan State, I don't really see them turning it around. I mean, they play Maryland next week. That's a tough game on the road. They play Ohio State next week. That's the week after. That's a guaranteed loss. Then they play Wisconsin. Then they play Michigan. I mean, I think they'll still play Michigan tough because they're Michigan State and they always play Michigan tough. But I do not see this team getting more than 8 wins. I see 8 wins being sort of the max of this team. I mean, Minnesota dominated them on the ground. Then when MSU commits to the ground, their secondary is atrocious. I mean, Tanner Morgan only threw 3 incompletions, 270 yards, 3 touchdowns. This game was not close. It was 34-0. MSU scored late. And MSU's offense just doesn't have Kenneth Walker. And that alone makes this offense not very good.
Yeah, and also, I think that this Minnesota team is severely underrated based on what they've done so far. I mean, they're 4-0 with 4 dominant wins. I mean, beat New Mexico State 38-0. Next game, 62-10. Next game, beat Colorado 49-7. And then winning over MSU 34-7. I mean, this team is just... I mean, they're just dominating. Behind Muhammad Ibrahim, like, no one can stop them. He's probably one of the top backs in college football. In this Minnesota team is looking dangerous, and they're, like, the only team that's competing in the Big Ten West right now.
Yeah, that is very clear. I think this team will easily make the Big Ten championship. We'll talk more about them a little bit later.
Yeah. All right. Next up, Kansas, Coastal, and James Madison are 4-0. Marco, how you feel about it?
I mean, Kansas, they're America's team. 4-0. They've beaten Houston. Houston's not a bad team. They're 4-0, but usually you think, oh, they have a bunch of cupcake games. But, they're not beating – Duke's not a bad team either. They beat them by 8. They're not beating up on bad teams. Coming in a Big 12 play, it's going to be tough. Playing Texas Tech next week, a team that just beat Texas. But, I think Kansas could have a big week. Obviously, Coastal Carolina, best team in football. Don't have to say much. And James Madison down 28-3 after giving up 28 points in 6 minutes. They come back 28-3. Not a very good score for football. And they come back very easily and win that game. And after recently coming to the FBS just this year from FCS, they are looking very good, and them and Coastal are competing in the Sun Belt.
Yeah, and one more thing about Kansas, they are just off of being in the top 25. They are 26 right now, and I still think that's underrated. I honestly don't think Wake Forest should be above them. I don't think Pitt should be above them. Definitely a lot of teams that they could be in the top 25 for. And we'll talk about their quarterback later and why he's making a Heisman run. But that Kansas team could be, especially if they come out of the Big 12 undefeated, they could be severely dangerous. All right, next up, number 11, Tennessee taking down number 20, Florida. All I can say here is Tennessee has looked really good this year, and Florida has been very on and off. Marco, do you have anything to add on?
Yeah, Anthony Richardson, he's a young QB. His first 3 games are all against ranked opponents. Versus Utah, at Kentucky, versus Tennessee. And, against Utah, he looked like a Heisman candidate. Here against Tennessee, he looks like a Heisman candidate. 453 yards, 2 touchdowns, a pick, 2 rushing touchdowns. Last week he looked bad, but the defense of Florida really is just not what we expected. And I think some of that credit has to go to Hendon Hooker. We'll talk more about him later on why he's one of the top Heisman candidates. His running ability, his passing ability. The only reason why he's a starter is because Joe Milton sucks. And, he is really looking like one of the best quarterbacks in college football.
Yeah, and, not to mention, like you were saying, Hendon Hooker's rushing ability has been killing teams. Like, these running quarterbacks, like these dual threat guys have just been showing why that's the best way to play football. I mean, Adrian Martinez rushed for 4 touchdowns while also throwing for over 200. Hendon Hooker threw for 349 yards, 2 touchdowns, while also rushing for 112 and 1 touchdown. Like, these dual threat guys are extremely dangerous, and teams are not having an easy time stopping them.
The SEC's future is in good hands with lots of dual threat QBs.
Oh, most definitely. Next up, SFA beating Warner 98-0. We don't really care about this, but I mean, 98-0 is just absolutely disrespectful.
I mean, yeah, they actually went for 2. It was when it was 98-0. I thought they were gonna go for 100. They take a knee. That made me pretty mad, but I don't know how you lose 98-0 in a football game.
Yeah, I mean, moving on. Next, we got the Heisman watch. Front runners, obviously, we got Bryce Young, Alabama. Next up, we got C.J. Stroud, Ohio State, and then Caleb Williams, the USC quarterback. All these guys, I mean, they were preseason Heismans, and they've sort of just held their ground. They're all playing well. But what we're really talking about is the middle of the pack guys and the dark horses that no one's talking about. So, Marco, you take the middle of the pack. I'll take the dark horses.
Yeah, for middle of the pack, I already talked about him earlier. Hendon Hooker, Tennessee. He's been a beast against good defenses. I mean, I see him easily being a finalist if he keeps this up, especially in SEC play. Next up, JJ McCarthy, Michigan quarterback. First few games that he played in, he looked like a Heisman frontrunner, but those were against bad teams. Now, against a decent Maryland defense, I mean, he wasn't really making that many mistakes besides the times where he decided to run around for 30 yards back and then throw the ball into the ground and fumble. But that's only one play. I mean, he only really, his stat sheet says 18 for 26, 220 yards, 2 touchdowns. He overthrows 5 guys that would have made his stat line Heisman level. I think he's still in contention, but not as much. And his teammate, Blake Corum, obviously 240 yards, 5 touchdowns the week before. He is definitely one of the biggest risers. And at 7, in my opinion, is Spencer Sanders, the Oklahoma State quarterback. He has been a beast. Their offense looks very good, and he's just been very good. And if he keeps us up, he can easily turn into a front runner.
Yeah, one guy I just want to comment on, number 5, JJ McCarthy. He has the receivers. Like, it's not like our guys weren't getting open. I mean, Andrell Anthony had to step on guys a couple times. Roman Wilson, Ronnie Bell. Like, these guys are gonna get open. It's his first game where he's the guy. Like, he's not coming in for a flash of excitement. He's not coming in for like 1 or 2 plays. He is the guy. He is the starting quarterback, and he's not used to that feeling, right? He doesn't have Cade waiting on the sidelines to come in. And I think he just needs to realize that. He needs to adjust. And once he realizes that, he'll make those downfield passes, and this Michigan team is going to be even more dangerous than they already feel. All right, now for the dark horse Heismans. Number 7, Kentucky, has this quarterback named Will Levis, who's just been having a great season. Already has thrown for 1,185 yards on a 67.5% completion percentage in 10 touchdowns. The only downside I'd say that he's had so far is he has thrown 4 picks. He needs to get that. Interception percentage down, but I will definitely, or his touchdown to interception ratio, he needs to get that a little better. But other than that, he's been leading this Kentucky team to victories. And if he can keep doing that, he's going to be up there the whole season. Next up, Deuce Vaughn, Kansas State running back. I don't really know about this guy as much. Marco, this is your guy, so I'm going to let you talk about him. All I know is that Kansas State has been dominating teams on the ground, and Deuce Vaughn has been that guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's 5'6", like 170 pounds or something, very small. He is so shifty. In that Oklahoma game, you could see guys just couldn't even get a hand on him. And when you do, he's very underrated strength-wise, similar to Blake Corum. He can move you forward, run you over for a couple extra yards. He is so shifty, good pass catcher. He is one of the most athletic players in college football.
Yeah. Just those like little guys, 5'6" to 5'10", that weigh like 170 are just absolute bowling balls, really hard to bring down. And then to pair with the Kansas guys, we're going to go to Kansas, and the quarterback, Jalen Daniels, has led Kansas to their first 4-0 start, and I believe it's 12 years. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but this guy has just, you can tell. Just like I was saying earlier, these dual threat guys are extremely dangerous, and Jalen Daniels has been doing that. He's led his team to wins over decent teams like Duke. He threw 19 for 23, 324 yards, 4 touchdowns, which is absolutely absurd, and that's in one game. Not to mention another 83 yards and a touchdown on the ground. This is one game. That's one game. And I think, personally, I think that he could be even higher up this list. He could almost be a middle-of-the-pack guy. But Jalen Daniels is definitely a guy to watch out for, and Kansas is a team that could be climbing the ranks within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, definitely. Next up, I want to talk a little bit about college football playoff watch. And the fan favorites, in our opinion, are Coastal, obviously. Kansas, we should all be rooting for Kansas. James Madison coming into FBS. I don't think I don't think James Madison has a chance at the playoffs. Coastal is going to win it, and Kansas has a chance in the Big 12. But, those are all the teams you should be rooting for now. The actual college football playoff, 1 Georgia, 2 Bama, 3 Ohio State. That is undebatable. Cal, why don't you take the teams that are on the brink of making the playoffs?
Yeah, obviously we have Michigan at number 4. These are just following the rankings almost. But Michigan at number 4, their defense needs to pick it up. Saw a lot of weak points last week, but they can do that. They'll definitely be in the run. Clemson showed some weak points last week against Wake Forest. I honestly think they're going to fall off pretty quick as soon as they play anyone semi-decent. But unfortunately for the rest of us, they do not play anyone all season, so it's going to be hard to knock them out of the playoffs. But with the way they played against Wake Forest, they might just lose to a garbage team. And then number 6, USC, led by new coach Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams at quarterback. They've just been taking down teams. I don't think they've looked phenomenal, but they've been winning games, so can't take that away from them. And then dark horses for the CFP, we have Tennessee, who's been on some runs. Has been on a run, one of the undefeated teams still left. Hendon Hooker has been phenomenal. They're figuring out ways to win games right now. Number 8, Kentucky. This Kentucky team, they've had a pretty decent strength of schedule, to be honest. I think if they go undefeated, personally, I would take them over Clemson just because of strength of schedule if they go undefeated. But that's up to the committee, not me. That's just me. And then at 9, we have Penn State. Only problem with Penn State here is that they do have they're in the Big Ten East, so they have a lot of tough games. If they're able to come out of there, win the Big Ten championship, obviously if they win the Big Ten championship, they're going to college football playoff. But if they're able to get out of the Big Ten East, they'll be a front runner for sure. And then lastly, we have Minnesota, whose only really tough game is number 9, Penn State, as we just mentioned. And Minnesota just looked really strong this year. As long as they can, even if they lose to Penn State here, they're making the Big Ten championship most likely. And if they can somehow win that game, a one-loss Minnesota with a Big Ten championship win is really hard to deny a college football playoff. Marco, do you have any comments on those?
Yeah, about Minnesota, I'm not saying that they are number 10 right now, but in terms of chance to making the playoffs, they win at Penn State, they beat Wisconsin, beat Iowa, beat Purdue. If they do all that and somehow beat Ohio State, Michigan, or maybe Penn State again in the Big Ten championship, that team is easily making the playoffs, and that's not that difficult for this good team to do. I mean, besides the Big Ten championship, I think Penn State could be a bit overrated. That we'll see in the coming weeks. So I think Minnesota does have a chance of making the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Next, we're recapping the NFL. We're just going to do this real fast. We want to keep this episode moving and get to the prediction segment. We're going to recap the NFL. The Ravens take down the Patriots. Mac Jones gets hurt. Brutal loss for the Patriots. Marco, you have anything to say about your team?
I mean, tough loss. I think if the O-line knew how to block and Nelson Aguilar didn't fumble, this game would be very close. But, I mean, the people are saying severe high ankle sprain for Mac Jones. That could take surgery. He could be out for 5 weeks, which would just screw our season.
Yeah. That'd be rough for the Patriots. Next up, Lions losing to the Vikings in classic Lions fashion. Definitely another couple questionable coaches. Like, you love Dan Campbell. I say this every week. We love Dan Campbell. We love his mentality. We love his grit. But he has made a few questionable coaching decisions. I know that's not totally on him. There's offensive coordinators, there's defensive coordinators. But he is the head coach. There's been some questionable decisions down the stretch. Vikings winning go-ahead drive with, minute left. So tough loss for the Lions. They're looking good, but they gotta figure out how to close out these games.
Yep, and next up, Bills lose to the Dolphins in a big AFC East game. Dolphins look like one of the best teams in the NFL, surprisingly. I mean, tough loss for the Bills. Obviously, a ton of injuries on defense with Tre'Davious White. Micah Hyde's out for the year. Jordan Poyer was out for the game. I think a healthy Bills team is a better team than the Dolphins, but good win for the Dolphins. They'll be a good playoff contender.
Yeah, also Tua, there's an investigation going on right now just because of the way he wobbled when he got up after a big hit to the head. So they're doing he cleared concussion protocol, I believe, but they're doing a big investigation to see if that stumbling was any neural problem to figure that out. Also, Jalen Waddle's been having monster games for the Dolphins, so just another receiver to keep in mind. And then finally, the Packers taking down the Bucks. Bucks can't put up any points right now. And to be honest, neither can the Packers. This was a 14-12 win for the Packers. Bucks lose on a missed 2-point conversion. Tough loss. I mean, it was honestly Tom Brady's fault just because they were on the 2 for the 2-point conversion. Inexcusable. They get a delay of game. Completely the quarterback's fault. Tom is looking rough to start this season. And then for our week 4 predictions, Marco, you want to start us off?
Yeah, first up, obviously starting with NFL, as we were talking about NFL, Dolphins at the Bengals. I mean, Bengals, rough start. They really picked it up last week. Their offense looked good. I think they continue to pick it up. I think we see the Dolphins are not that good of a team. I think they're a good team, but not that good. I don't think these Dolphins corners can guard Boyd, Chase, and Higgins. I see Bengals winning this 34-28.
I think that is a crazy thing to say based on how good the Dolphins look and how bad the Bengals have looked. I got the Dolphins here. I don't really know why you're taking the Bengals. All right. Next up, we got Seahawks at the Lions. Seahawks have looked very meh this season. Very boring team to watch, to be honest. I think I got the Lions here. Their offense has been really good. They just got to finish out some drives. I believe they're getting Jamison Williams back this week. He's questionable, I think, but I think they're getting him back this week. That'll be huge for the Lions. One of the most explosive players in the draft. I got the Lions in this one.
I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown and DeAndre Swift both questionable. If those two can't play, I think that completely flips the script. But I think Lions win. I don't think Seahawks are a good team.
Yeah, but also DeAndre Swift has been questionable the past couple weeks. He was limited last week, but Jamal Williams was also able to get it done, so it didn't end up. I mean, DeAndre Swift is one of the best running backs in the league, but Jamal Williams is able to get it done, short yardage especially. All right, next up, we have Bills at the Ravens. Bills coming off a tough loss. Ravens coming off of a big win. Lamar has been playing absolutely out of his mind. But I think the Bills are going to get on here. They're the better team, and despite some injuries, I still believe they're one or two best teams in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, Lamar's been single-handedly carrying the Ravens so far. They're getting J.K. Dobbins back, which will limit Lamar's rushing a little and help him out in that way. But I think Bills' defense is good. They're getting Tre'Davious White back. I don't see Ravens winning this game. I got Bills by probably 10 points.
All right. Next we got Chiefs at Bucks. The Bucks have just looked absolutely terrible offensively. Their defense has looked fine, but their offense just has been unimpressive. I think Mahomes, Chiefs lost last week, but it was close. I think Mahomes is going to get it done. He's just got to get the ball to Kelsey and let him make plays.
I mean, this is the best defense in the NFL with the Buccaneers in terms of stats. And, I mean, their players are some of the best. The thing is, Chris Godwin questionable, Julio Jones questionable. They are getting Mike Evans back, but Tom Brady just didn't have receivers to throw to last week. I think this week he does, but I still think that Mahomes figures out this Buccaneers defense. I got a pretty low-scoring game, 20-14 Chiefs.
All right. Next up, we got Pats at the Packers. This is going to be an interesting one. Packers didn't put up many points last week, but like you said, Bucks have one of the best defenses in the NFL. So it's going to be interesting, but I think I'm taking the Packers here. At home, Mac Jones potentially out for a long time. I just don't think the Pats are going to be able to get it done here.
It's Bailey Zapp season. He's going to dominate the Packers defense, or Brian Hoyer, whoever it is. Pats are going to absolutely lock up Aaron Rodgers. I got Pats 27-10.
Biased. Terrible pick. Terrible. All right, next
Absolutely
up.
Not.
Number 4, Michigan. We're going to go to college. We're going to flip it to college football. Started off with number 4, Michigan at Iowa. This is going to be an interesting one for sure. I'm taking Michigan to start it, but Iowa, one of the better defenses out there, but unfortunately their offense is absolutely atrocious. One of the most offensively inept teams in all of college football. I mean, just truly terrible, awful. Michigan, J.J. McCarthy will get a chance to prove why he can make plays against a good defense. And this defense, despite being not as good as we thought for Michigan, maybe they can turn it up a little for this Iowa game.
Yeah, I mean the Michigan defense is gonna lock up. I mean Iowa's offense is atrocious. It's gonna come down to, can Iowa get 3 pick sixes? If they cannot, Michigan wins. If they can, then it'll be close. I got Michigan. I think it'll be somewhat low scoring. I say 28-10 Michigan.
All right. Next up, we got number 7, Kentucky at number 14, Ole Miss. Very good game here. I'm taking Kentucky here behind Jalen Daniels, that phenomenal quarterback. I think he's going to rush for a touchdown, probably throw for 275 yards, a pair of throwing touchdowns. Kentucky's going to win this one, but it's going to be a battle.
By the way, it's Will Levis, not Jaden Daniels. Still. Oh shoot!
Still sorry. I was reading that as Kansas. Sorry. I'm still taking Kentucky here. I think it'll be closer because I was reading it as Kansas. But I think it'll be closer than a lot of people expect. But Will Levis will get this done as long as he doesn't throw too many picks.
Yeah, I think this could be Jackson Dart's breakout game, the Ole Miss QB. I mean, they have great athletic receivers with guys like Jonathan Mingo. I think Ole Miss's defense is better than years in the past, although it's not great. I see the Kentucky run game continuing to struggle under Kowalski smoke, and I think Ole Miss stops the run. Will Levis is forced to pass too much. Ole Miss gets a couple of picks. Jackson Dart plays well. I got Ole Miss by a couple of scores.
All right. Now we're just going to alternate. Marco and I are just going to go back and forth. We don't have too much time. All right, next up we got Oklahoma State at number 16, Baylor. Oklahoma State has looked decent this year. Spencer Sanders, Their quarterback has definitely had a good season, but their defense is not looking as solid as it did last year. I'm still taking OK State here. I think their offense is going to be too strong for Baylor.
Yeah, definitely going to be an interesting game, but I think OK State's offense is too much for an overrated Baylor team. Next up, number 22 Wake Forest at number 23 Florida State. Florida State undefeated. Wake Forest a tad bit overrated. This is going to be an extremely high-scoring game, but I think Florida State wins. Their defense is very sharp, and their offense is good enough. Wake Forest's defense is one of the worst Power 5 defenses. Their offense is good, but I don't think this offense gets it done. I got Florida State 45-27.
Yeah, it'll definitely be an interesting one there. Next up, we got number 2 Bama, or number 17 Texas A&M at number 2 Bama. A&M coming off a big win last week, as we talked about earlier. Bama obviously showing some weakness as they barely beat Texas. And Texas obviously losing last week. Or 2 weeks ago, I guess now. But I think Alabama's going to take this one regardless. But it's going to be interesting to see how strong Alabama looks in this one, I guess.
By the way, it's Alabama versus Arkansas, I believe.
Oh, it is. Sorry. Yep, you're right. But still, same thing applies. But yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see how well they play.
Yeah, I mean, Arkansas and A&M are two very similar teams anyways. They just played last week and it was close. I got Bama, but I think they will struggle. I got Bama 30-17. It'll be close like last year.
Well, didn't A&M win last year?
No, Bama versus Arkansas.
Oh, yeah. Dude, I'm off right now.
Okay. Next up, number 10, NC State, perhaps a bit overrated. At number 5, Clemson. Night game in the Valley. I mean, it's still going to be close. I think Clemson gets it done, though. DJ DJ, he's going to have a good game. I don't think NC State's a very good team, but I don't think Clemson is very good either. I see Clemson winning this 30-20. I think they'll struggle a little. I see them winning and keep on being overrated.
Yeah, despite me thinking and knowing that both these teams are very overrated, I think I'm taking NC State in this one. Just the way that Clemson played last week, taking Wake Forest to overtime. I think NC State is better than Wake Forest, and I think they're going to get it done versus Clemson this week. All right, moving on, we got Underdog Predictions. We're going to move through this once again. I'm taking TCU over number 18, Oklahoma. TCU's 3-0 right now, and they're at home against the Oklahoma team who's coming off a tough loss to a Kansas State team who absolutely destroyed them on the ground. This is just important because it plays to TCU's advantage. They have a dual threat backfield of Kendre Miller and Amari DeMarcado. If they run the ball well, they're going to win this game, and I think they can do it here.
Yeah, definitely going to be an interesting game after Oklahoma lose last week. I got Mississippi State at home versus number 17 Texas A&M. Mississippi State tends to have a couple upsets a year, and last year They had a couple of big upsets. And this is a perfect game for an upset. Home game versus a very young Texas A&M team. First real SEC test for Texas A&M besides last week against Arkansas, but that was not on the road. And, I mean, they have so many young starters with all those 5 stars. They've never seen a crowd like this. And Will Rogers, 16 touchdowns on the year already. He sometimes just goes crazy like he did last year sometimes. And I think this will be one of those days. He'll pass for over 400 yards, a few TDs. I see this being a couple score game. I got Mississippi State 37-27.
Wow. Taking them by 2 possessions, too. That's a very bold pick. All right, we're going to finish it off here with our breakout players. For my breakout player for next week, I'm taking Michael Penix, the Washington QB. After transferring out of Indiana last year, this dude has just had an absolutely monster season so far. He's thrown for over 1,300 yards. He's thrown for 12 touchdowns, and he's only thrown one pick. That's got to be one of the best ratios in all of college football. They're playing UCLA this week. Despite being away, UCLA's home environment isn't too bad. Just not a lot of people go to their games. And I think he's just going to have another monster week coming off a few big ones.
Yeah, he'll definitely be very impressive, especially after that Michigan State game a couple of weeks ago. I got Nick Singleton, 5-star freshman, Penn State running back. He's playing against the worst Power 5 team in Northwestern, who just lost to Miami of Ohio and Southern Illinois. This team does not defend the run very well. They average allowing 161 rushing yards a game against teams like Southern Illinois and Miami of Ohio. This Penn State run game is one of the best in college football. I see him rushing for over 150 yards, 2 touchdowns, also because they do not want to open up the playbook against a terrible team. I see him absolutely dominating. I just think this game won't be close, and he will be the reason for that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think they're going to, like you said, keep the playbook pretty closed. I think he's going to get a few screen passes, lots of runs. We'll definitely see what he can do a little bit this coming week. That's all I got for today. Marco, you got anything else?
Nope. Bye.
All right. Thank you, guys, for listening to the Second Take Podcast. We will see you next week. Peace.